actually starting this phone call now.
Is it starting? Is it actually starting?
This is the conversation has now officially started after almost an hour of deliberating of how to record this and make sure we have the right lighting, etc.
It's literally been 10 years of this. I'm used to it.
Oh my gosh. Honestly, it's not, this kind of stuff it's not my forte.
No, it is not your forte.
We haven't even actually talked about the fact that this is the day. Like
this is the day.
This is like, I feel like it's like our birthday.
It's like our birthday
joint
and
birthday.
Like friendiversary
all in one
combined.
Day.
It's like it's actually, if you think about it, it's like the birthday of our Renaissance.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's
our
so
personal
true.
Renaissance.
That's
in the history books, it would be December 3rd, 2000.
It's like a holiday.
In the Uffizi one day.
Yeah. It's like us, like with the Pieta of Paulina and Caitlin, December 3rd. Like it was this down in Florentine history of, the second Renaissance.
The second
2013.
Of 2013.
Yeah.
And now it's 2023.
And now it's 2023. I can't really understand that because it feels like it was just yesterday, but then it also feels like it was like 100 years ago.
I know. It's like that. It's, I don't know, the passing of time since then has just sped up. Like, at an insane velocity. I can't even keep track anymore.
So true.
But then so many of the underlying themes that we learned when we left are still so real today,
I was thinking, like, while I was getting ready this morning, that every single thing that I do and choose, like, pulls from Florence and pulls from Italy and pulls from that experience. Everything I do.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was such a rebirth for us that it was like, I mean, everything. It was everything.
It really
was. Because it was us coming back to ourselves. Like, I feel like when we were in Vancouver, like that was just, we were so disconnected from our truth.
Yeah.
That we both knew that we needed to take that leap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Massive leap.
I mean, and it was a big leap. Like we did have like full lives. We had jobs, we had families, we had, furniture, apartments, we had things going on. Yeah, boyfriends. We had a lot of things that were kind of on the line.
Yeah.
And just to kind of give that up. I mean, Florence was never necessarily on the map for me to live.
Yeah.
I don't think it was for you either.
No. But when I heard, when that became our decision, it was like, it just made so much sense. Like, I was like, oh, yeah.
I think you need to backtrack a little bit and tell.
I think we have to go back to the beginning
about how it all came to be.
Well, let's start with that, but also talk a little bit about who you are. Like, who the hell are you? Why do we know? Why are you here? Why do we know each other? Like, who is this person I'm just having?
That question all the
time. Let's backtrack a little bit here.
Let's backtrack.
Why do we know each other?
Bring it back.
Who are you? What do you...
Who am I? Well, we met at the infamous Cactus Club. We were two hostesses with obnoxious laughs. Remember, we couldn't be together at the hostess stand. You were like sent to the back and I was like cleaning toilets and then they would alternate us because we couldn't be there at the same time because we were too obnoxious. I'm
pretty sure our manager started like making sure we weren't working together because we were just
I think
so
it started with the sense of humor, really. I think we connected on that first and then we slowly kind of build that into like a really strong friendship.
Yeah.
Over the years.
Totally. It was like, it was just, I don't know. There's no words for it. It was just like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We knew each other from a past life for
meeting
sure.
Meeting of the minds.
Okay. But I remember hearing about you and being like, who is this Paulina chick everyone's talking about? Like, who is this new, everyone's like, Paulina. I'm like, who is Paulina? Who is this new girl everyone's talking about? And then I remember like seeing this like makeup thing that you'd left in the bottom of the hostess stand, and I was like, what? Like, who is this chick who just leaves her makeup in the in the hostess stand? So I already had these like I had these like prejudgments about you. Like, I was like, I don't know who this person is. And then I like met you, and it was just like, it was like, oh, hi, yeah, we know each other already. And then I like invited you to my birthday.
Yes.
Like that weekend. Like, it was just like, of course you were coming.
That's right. I think we worked together maybe once, and then I ended up at your birthday party.
Yeah. And that is
And then
so
that
weird.
night we connected.
It feels like, oh my gosh, I can't even go that far back, because that just feels like a completely different lifetime ago.
Yeah, I don't think it was many moons ago.
many. I don't even want to say how many years ago that was now. Gosh, that was like another lifetime ago, truly. But so yeah, that's how we initially met.
That's how we met. And who I am now, I'm
yes. Who are you now?
Who I am now. No, well, I'm a designer. I'm a design director.
Yeah,
I live and work in London, and I'm a brand builder.
This Paulina designed this beautiful candle, but by our friend Chloe.
Yeah, so I've been building brands. I had the pleasure of working on your brand, which is always so fun.
My podcast art was done by Paulina.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're ever looking for like the best art director ever, this is your girl right here.
Thank you for the shout out.
Yeah.
Always appreciate it. But I mean, part of the reason I am a designer, this is why it like directly ties in to the story, is because of Florence, because of that.
Yeah.
Because of taking the lead. And I remember actually how it came about. I studied political science in university, and I was really confused when I left university. I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. And I specifically remember the day that I got this download that I should be a designer. I was like walking to the grocery store. It was like nighttime. And I was walking with my boyfriend at the time. And I said, I think I need to be a designer. I know how to draw. I'm artistic. But I need to learn how to digitize my skill.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I kind of allowed my thought to come out. And then this thing happens a lot. It takes me a long time to process and get to that place where I say things out loud. But because I know that the minute that I do, I'm going to have to do something about it. It's going to have to become true. So the minute I said that, I knew that it's something in the atmosphere had changed, and the direction, one way or another, was going to have to take me there. And that's kind of how the seed was planted for going back to school, and specifically for design. And if Florence hadn't happened, who knows what I would have ended up doing? Maybe I would have just been doing, communications, or I would have just, who knows? Yeah. I actually really don't know what I would have done had I not found design.
That's so crazy to think about, because I feel like just you are such a naturally creative person, and yeah, I literally cannot even imagine if you had kept that to yourself and you had not made that choice to really follow that. Because, so many people are creative, but then they choose not to follow that within their careers, and because it's like, whatever, there's other jobs to be done, but it's crazy that it kind of tied in with like leaving, and then also making this choice to like follow your passion.
Yeah.
Because it was different. What you chose to do was different, obviously, than what your final degree was, etc.
Yeah.
And so, yes. Okay, so let's go back. So we knew each other from back in the day.
Yep.
Obviously, our friendship continued on. And then I think it was like, must have been about, was it 5 years later, I'm guessing?
So we met I'll tell you right now, we met in 2007 or late 2007, beginning of 2008 is when I started working at Cactus Club.
That's crazy.
That's when it started. Yeah. So our friendship kind of started building and budding around then. And I would say around 2012 is the first time, end of 2011, beginning of 2012 is when we went to your family's cabin that
Right.
summer.
Right. And that, right. Of course, of course, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where the initial seed
Was
was
planted.
planted, because I had, prior to this, been thinking, and, what should I do? The design idea kind of came to light. I was having a hard time at the time. I was really struggling. I was very unhappy. I didn't know what I was going to be doing with my life. Felt very directionless. I was very low at that point,
Yeah.
actually.
Mm-hmm.
And you invited me to go to your family's cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a much needed escape, like physical, metaphorical escape from my life and how I was feeling. And it's just the most truly magnificent little paradise.
It is.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really special. It's very magical.
It is.
And it was on that weekend that we started sharing the things that we wanted to put forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I said, I want to study design.
Yeah. We started saying some stuff out loud.
Yeah.
I think it was things that we had known like deep inside of us. We both knew that we weren't in the right places.
Yeah.
And we weren't going in the right direction with where
Yeah.
we were at.
Yeah.
We were in our early 20s, and we both kind of, like you were saying before, we had like all of these solidified things like jobs and, whatever, a life, I guess. But we both were like deeply not being fulfilled by what we wanted to do. We weren't like fully honoring our truth.
No.
And then I remember, I don't actually know if it was that you said that you wanted to start doing design then, or if it was like, I think we had just started planting the seeds of like, we wanted to go to Europe.
I think they kind of went hand in hand, because initially we were talking about like, it would be so nice to be able to live somewhere else and experience somewhere else and go to Europe and have that experience. And then at the same time, I was really in my head about trying to figure out what my next moves were going to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it started kind of the bigger conversations of, well, if you're going to do this, then maybe I'll do it with you.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like I remember the conversation. We were like in North Bay, and there's like this massive, powerful mountain like right there.
Yep.
And I've always called that my church, because that's the place that I go to, and I ask for the things that I desire and the things that I want, and I also give so much gratitude and thanks. And it's such a powerful spot. Like there's so much energy there.
It's very quiet. It's very
so
quiet.
so
very
peaceful,
still, very tranquil. Yeah.
but still like holds this like really potent energy.
Oh, it really does.
And you and I were both sitting there, and I feel like, from my memory, of course we're probably going to remember it in different ways, but I was like, I really want to go to Europe. And you were like, me too.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm getting my European passport. Like I was getting my Italian passport that year, and I was like, I'm getting my Italian passport. Like I could actually technically move there. And you were like, me too.
Yeah. I was
And
getting my Polish
we never
passport.
had this conversation before. Yeah.
Yeah,
so you
that's
were
true.
getting
That
your
was the
Polish
first time.
passport. So I was like, okay. And then it was like literally I feel it was just, let's go. Let's do it. And I was like, I don't even care what I do there. I hadn't even admitted to myself, I think at that point, that I was ready to start doing interior design. I think that came later on for me.
Yeah.
Even though it was something that I wanted to do from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I hadn't like really allowed myself to fully dream that yet. At that point, I was like, I just wanted to just go somewhere else. And
I think something happened in that moment for us also, because it's still something I think I struggle with sometimes. It's like living with intent and not just leaving it up to chance, like actually being intentional and setting things forward before yourself, and kind of going towards a particular goal and allowing yourself to believe that you can actually achieve that goal is a really powerful thing. And I think the fact that we were both in that moment so supportive and holding so much space for our particular dreams, I think something very cosmic happened there.
Yeah.
Because it kind of set everything in motion, didn't it?
Yeah. It was something.
So then it was in January. So that was in July, because it was right before my birthday. And then in January is when we got the passports.
That's right. And this is another crazy story.
Yeah.
Because it almost sounds like it's so crazy you'd think that we're making it up. Like,
I know.
So we finished out the process. It was about a 2-year process for me to get my passport.
Yep.
And, you know, I finally get the call that it's ready, and I've got all of the paper in and the photo and all this. And I go downtown to go pick it up, and I call you and I'm like, hey, I got my passport in my hands. Like, I finally picked it up. Like, I got it. And you were like, Caitlin, I just picked mine up this morning.
Yeah.
On the same day. And we never even told each other.
Yeah.
So it was.
And the process had also started. My process, yours was 2 years in the making. Mine took about like 9 months or something.
Yeah.
So the process was actually for both of us happening at different times as well. That's what made it weird.
Yeah.
From 2 different embassies, like started at the process completely
two
different
countries, like 2 different.
Yeah, different. And then we picked it up on the same day. We were both like, this is the universe showing up for us again.
Yeah.
Being like, girls, like, how many times?
Yeah.
How many times do I have to do this before you're going to listen?
Straight
Isn't
up.
it?
So true.
You know, and you know what they say? They say it all starts with a whisper and ends with a bang. And I think at every turn, there was just something that was becoming louder and louder and louder, kind of pushing us in the direction of actually making that step and doing something about it, like do something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it was sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to ask you, do you remember, I think we applied when did the design school conversations start? Do you remember?
I think we had decided we were both going to go. We didn't know where. Yeah. We were kind of initially thinking London. And I was like, I remember being like, I don't even care. Like, I'll clean toilets in London. Like, I don't freaking care. I just want to be there. Like, And so we had no clue like what exactly we were going to do. And then I remember coming over to your place. Remember we used to have like our Sunday hangouts?
Yes.
And I came over to your place and you were like, so like, I'm kind of down to go back to school. I'm thinking like that I might do graphic design.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, that makes so much sense. And so we kind of started looking up like graphic design programs, and then, oh my gosh, Trina, it's actually crazy now that I'm saying this, because how did this school have a graphic design program and an interior design program
That's the other.
School? Like, that's the whole other part. There's just so many things that are like, you're like, this cannot be a coincidence, you know? And I like at this point in my life, I don't look at anything as a coincidence.
Me neither.
And there were so many things back then where I was like, this is a coincidence. But now I'm like, no. No, that's was
how
like,
I feel.
Yeah,
sure.
It wasn't. Like, it was just, there's so many crazy parts to it. Anyways, so we found this school that happened to be in Florence, and they had graphic and interior design. And it was like, okay, Florence. Yeah. Okay. That sounds amazing.
Yeah. I think there was like the power of deduction, and a lot of it was also financial at the time.
I'm sure that had a lot to do with
London, extortionate out, Paris out.
Yeah.
You know, and we were kind of, you know, the cities were getting incrementally smaller as we were going on, you know, they were just getting smaller and more remote.
So true.
And then that's when the Florence School came about.
Yeah.
And this was closer towards the summer, so almost a full year later.
Yeah.
From the Anvil Island experience. Yeah. This was almost a year later, and we lodged the papers together. We applied together. Do you remember?
I remember.
We applied together. We sent off the email. We packaged everything up and, you know, just hoped for the best.
I remember like us going into your old office, like at your old job, and we were like secretly sending things in like after hours, trying to get everything faxed in or whatever it was that we were doing back then. And And
It was like dial up.
Yeah, exactly.
Bags a messenger pigeon.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, yeah, that was, yeah, we just started taking the steps in the leap. But like, it's crazy because I've always, like, I started getting into manifestation when I was around 19 years old. So it would have been around that time, or just before that time. Like, I first heard about manifestation and the law of attraction when I was working in Cactus Club.
Was it? Is that when it started?
Yeah, I'd never heard
actually
about it before then. Yeah, it was then that I initially had heard about The Secret, and I was just like, it was another one of those things where I was like, yeah, this resonates with me and makes total sense. Like, I didn't need any convincing around it, and so this was kind of like the ultimate manifestation, because it was like, okay, we said it out loud, and then we just started taking the actionable steps towards what it was that we wanted to do.
I think that's the other crucial factor when you're making such a big leap and such a big change. I think part of it is also that it has to be like a full body yes. Like, every step of the way has to resonate, like from your head down to your toes. It has to fully land. And every time we had a conversation, whether it was, I want to move to Europe, or, you know, how do we utilize this passport? How do we make use of it? And, oh, I want to, you know, change career trajectories. Oh, I want to learn too. And every single time we were at, like, you know, adding the building blocks to the story that we were building, it always landed, like fully landed. There was never any doubt.
No.
There was never any doubt that you wouldn't go through with it. I don't think you had doubt that I would.
No, I
not go through with it.
Because I knew.
Yeah.
I saw it. Like, we saw it in each other's eyes when we first talked about it. And I just knew, even if you had told me and came to me and was like, no, I don't think I can do it, I would have been like, Paulina, that's not you talking. That's your fear.
I'm not having that.
I wasn't gonna, I literally was not having that. I would not have had that at all. But you actually never came to that point, and you would have had ample opportunity to not follow through with it, because there was so many factors that were keeping you here. And
there was a lot.
I remember coming over to your house when we finally booked the ticket for the flight, and it was like, I came over and I was like, okay, we are pressing book right now, like right here, right now. And the date had just happened to be December 3rd for our flight. And it was like the cheapest flight ever. I think it was like less than $500.
Yeah, I had the 500 figure in my head too. Yeah, it was quite cheap.
It was
well, it was a one-way, wasn't it?
It was a one-way. It was a one-way.
It was a one-way.
Yeah.
We went to London first.
Yeah.
But before we went to London, we had the epic airport goodbye, which was
at the epic airport goodbye, where everyone came with us to say goodbye, and it was
and we had goodbye parties. We had furniture to sell. We had parents to say goodbye to, jobs to quit.
If you think about it, like, that was kind of crazy.
It was like, crazy.
Just to up and just be like, okay, no, we're gonna like move to a completely different country now, where we know nobody, and we're just gonna like start this new life there and do something that we've never done before. And but I just knew that we both had that same thread within the both of us, where it was like, we just had to follow it. It didn't matter like how scary it was, or how like, in, you know, that leap of, you have to take that leap.
I think at the time, I think we were also particularly lucky that we had each other.
That's true.
I think had I been, truthfully, I think if I had not had you, I don't know whether I would have done it when I would have done it, or if I would have done it much later in life, or, you know, what other kind of avenue I would have taken to get there. So I think having you, I felt like I didn't want to let you down. And by proxy, not letting you down meant that I wasn't letting myself down. Like, you were the mirror that I needed to follow through with the experience that I so deeply desired. So in that, I think that, like, on a very base level, I think that was the biggest blessing, is that we had each other to push one another along in the process. This even prior to the journey, which was a whole thing, you know?
So that's very true. I don't know if I definitely don't think I would have done that by myself.
And I think in as much you weren't either in the happiest of places at the time
Oh
either.
God, no. No.
You didn't have some like big
No.
love story with Vancouver itself. And I
No.
think you really wanted to like spread your wings and have the opportunity to be somebody new, reconstruct yourself in a new way, in a new place where no one had expectations of you.
Yeah. I think as much as it was like new, it all felt new, it more just felt like coming back to myself.
Well,
You know what I
that's
mean?
kind
Like
of
it was like, okay, now I'm gonna be going somewhere into a new place so that I can just be myself. Because it just
So
felt
true.
like, yeah, Vancouver was just not where I wanted to be at all.
Yeah.
Like it just felt
Yeah.
so done to me.
At the time.
At that time. And I was so ready to just for change, I think.
You know what I remember specifically on this day, December 3rd. I don't remember the last time I felt it was such a deep sorrow saying goodbye to everybody that I loved. But it was such a confusing, confounding feeling because in the grief, you also have this weird sense of adventure and excitement. And as soon as we crossed through security and we couldn't see, our loved ones anymore, and we just kind of looked at each other. It was just you and I. I had about 3 coats on. Do you remember?
Oh.
Because we couldn't fit them in the suitcase.
Trina, do you remember? I had 3 fur coats on. Okay. I had like remember my big orange suitcase? Like we had so much stuff. You couldn't even fit a toothpick more into our luggage. Like we were like, I was like, how much stuff can I bring with me? Without someone being like, ma'am, like you can't freaking, you can't bring your whole wardrobe on your back.
I actually forgot about the fur coats. That's hilarious.
I actually ripped my coat. Remember, my fur coat ripped down the back because I had so many coats on. Like it was just like I was like just taking everything with me.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
I remember that. And we went to Milestones and we had a Bellini and we're like, well,
here we go. Nothing to lose now. We were like we were gone. There was nothing when you're on that other side of security. You're basically, it feels like you're like in this gone anyways.
Yeah,
you're like all right. Well, no going back now.
No going back now. And do you remember you and I sat on the airplane and right beside, this was sign number 5 million. The girl that was sat next to us on the plane was a graphic designer from London.
See, I don't remember. I remember talking to her, but I didn't remember that part. That's insane.
Yeah. And now I live
so it was
in
like
London.
Future you on the plane, kind of. Like it was like
yeah,
that's crazy.
I mean, the fact that I ended up in London and we started in London.
Yeah, that's also crazy too.
Like 10 years later, I'm in London. I'm a designer.
That's nuts.
We were getting on the plane with a graphic designer.
That was some future energy right there.
Going to design school on our way.
That's actually really, really crazy.
And we landed. I also slept so hard on that plane.
I remember I slept like the whole time. Like I woke up and they're like, "No, we are landing in London." I was like, "What?" I thought we just got on this plane. Like I had no. I might have been the couple drinks that we had at the beginning of the flight, but drinks. we were it was the fastest flight ever. And then when we got there, it was just like so good. We didn't run into her. Our mutual best friend Chloe met us at the airport with the signs with her dad,
with Clint.
They picked us up, and then we just had like it
was the start of the epic road trip in London.
That's right.
Like exposure to the UK. We weren't just in London, to the UK.
Yeah.
And even all of that, just absorbing London on that first day, it was so disorienting. Didn't even know my name.
That was your first time there?
That was my first time there.
Yeah. That's great. That's right.
It felt super exciting because for me, even still now, and then as well, one of my favorite feelings in the world is seeing something new for the first time.
Yeah.
You know, when you discover something new, you're like, oh my, like you see something beautiful and majestic for the first time. I just think it's like an aphrodisiac for me. I love it. Like going to a new city or seeing a new view. And the minute we arrived in London, I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I have to look forward to for the near future. It's so exciting.
It felt so big. It was so different.
It felt so big.
Yeah. The
so
world just
exciting.
felt like it was just like opening up for us, and it was oh my God.
Were you nervous when you were thinking about school, or were you just going through the motions when we were in London, gearing up to go to Italy?
I think so. Yeah, I think I was. We had no idea where we were going to live. So we
we didn't even have a house.
We didn't have.
We were moving
house,
to
a place where we didn't.
Time.
Yeah, and we were starting school. We didn't have anywhere to live, so it was that was definitely something that was like weighing on my mind a bit. But again, just trusted in the fact that we would find somewhere. Like we weren't going to be just like homeless on the streets of Florence with our 5 fur coats and suitcases.
Remember?
Like I knew that wasn't going to get to that point, but like we didn't have a home.
You remember somewhere along the journey, my suitcase busted?
Oh my God.
We must have looked like quite a pair. I think I had like duct tape on my luggage because it like exploded at somewhere because it was so full.
Yeah, I remember.
You had about 3 fur coats on.
We were like, I can't even.
Can you imagine what we would have looked like?
Like
quite a pair.
Quite a pair. Like I'm sure a lot of people were like, what the fuck's up with those two? For sure. Like, I mean, I guess we got to get into the part about, so after being in London, I guess we got to talk about what came next. Listen,
you lead the way, sister. I'm just a passenger in this car.
So, yeah.
You take the wheel, sweetheart.
What did come next then? I'm trying to actually like figure this out now. Yeah, so we spent like a month in London. We stayed with my family, which was super nice.
They were so lovely.
So nice. And then we went on to Rome. We were going into Rome. I think that was right after Christmas. We went to Rome and we were staying at a friend's house that just happened to be a prince. We won't go into any more of that, but maybe we will another time.
Maybe we will. Maybe one of these days we'll dive into it a little deeper. If there's a deeper interest, we can kind of dive into it.
Maybe,
down the line.
Yeah, we'll see.
But
I might have to wait till the book comes out.
It did, yeah, exactly. It did add like a layer of surrealness to it as well. Like we got to see.
Came from Vancouver.
We've never been to Italy before.
Yeah,
we arrive in Italy, and the experience is like 1 in a million.
Yeah,
right off the bat. We go straight? Yes, we did. So we did Rome with this individual. And we got to see and experience parts of Rome.
A very different side of Rome.
We got to see a different side of Rome, like seeing a city through the eyes of like a local is always better. Seeing it through the eyes of a prince is significantly better.
It's a different level. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we got to go to a castle.
We did. Well, first it was Rome. We got to experience Rome for a few days, and then we went to Tuscany.
Yeah.
It was kind of bringing us closer towards Florence, and we had a few nights in that beautiful hotel in. That was also a trip.
Where was that one? Yeah, where was that?
La Pace. La Pace.
Right. Oh my God.
How could you forget La Pace?
I remember the name of the hotel, but I can't remember the name of the town we were in.
Wasn't it
Montepulciano? Is there something?
Montevettolini?
No, Montevettolini was where the castle was that we stayed in.
Montecatini.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
We were in Montecatini. We walked in. It's like a beautiful, grand, old hotel in this thermal spa town.
Right.
It was right before New Year's, so it wasn't super busy.
That was, oh my God.
Everybody was like 80 plus other than us.
So true.
And it was really grand. And it's like, it was like a throwback to, some time ago.
Definitely.
And I just remember having oysters and champagne. That was my first oyster, actually, having oysters and champagne. And there was the tarot card reading,
there was
randomly.
Yeah, that was on New Year's. That would have been on New Year's Eve in... Oh my gosh, what's the name?
It wasn't on New Year's. It was the first day we arrived at the hotel.
Was it the first day?
Random psychic was just there
at the restaurant inside the hotel.
Yes.
And I never spoke to her, but you felt called to speak to her. Like, how did that even happen? I didn't speak to her.
I spoke to her. She said, "You're with someone and you won't be." And I was like, "She's wrong." Yeah.
So let's touch on that, because when you had left Vancouver, you were in a long-term serious relationship.
Yeah, I was in a long-term relationship. With someone. I think at that point it had been about 5 years.
Yeah, 5 or 6 years, I think.
5 or 6 years.
And the plan was to come back to Vancouver after the year at school.
Yeah, the plan was to figure out a way to be together after the year, be it wherever that was going to be. I mean, I think at the time the assumption was always going to be that I was going to come back.
Yeah.
I think part of me figured I might, but I think deep down, I really didn't want to come back. But it was, I remember feeling so incredibly defensive when the psychic had said that to me.
Were you?
Oh,
did you feel you were really?
Oh, I was really defensive. Like, I was thinking, she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's so random. But the immediate thing she touched on was the relationship. That's the first thing she pulled. She said, "You're in a relationship, but he's not for you." She said that, yeah.
Who the hell just comes out and says that?
But also, like, where did this psychic come from?
I have no idea. I'm not even sure she was actually there. Like,
was she even there?
I don't even know. No, she was. I know she was, but it was just so random that she was there, kind of like off in the corner.
Yes.
Like, it's not like in Vancouver you go to a restaurant and there's like a psychic that's just like in the corner waiting to like read people.
I actually, oddly enough, if we had gone into that hotel tomorrow, I could tell you exactly where she was sitting.
Yeah. I remember seeing her from the corner of my eye, and I had no pull to talk to her. And I remember you coming. Did you tell me right away that she had said that?
I think I told you right away.
And I was probably like, that's ridiculous. Who's that crazy bitch in the corner telling people what's going to happen with their lives? But was she speaking in Italian? Like, do you remember?
She was speaking in Italian, and I think one of the people that we were with was translating to us.
That's even better.
So that's even worse.
That's even worse, is what I should have said.
Yeah.
Yes,
so you're getting bad news via translation.
You're like, are you sure you're translating that properly? Are you sure that's what she said to me?
I don't. No entiendo.
Yeah, this isn't making any sense. This is not. This must be wrong. Must not be translated. Well, that's really crazy. So there was that. Then we moved
we had
on.
That weird New Year's party in the hotel.
We were meeting like famous designers and like journalists and people,
hotel owners.
Like we were with a random bunch, and then there's us. There's these two young 20-year-olds from Vancouver.
I had duct tape on my
that
suitcase.
Had duct tape on her suitcase. I'm walking around with a ripped fur coat, and we don't speak Italian at that point.
Nope.
Like, at least not to the point of feeling comfortable enough to have a conversation with someone. That's for sure. And we, there we are with this group, and they must have just been like, what the hell? Like, I remember some of the wives of like the husbands that were like, we were like just in this group with, just must have been like, what the heck? I mean, thank God everyone was so nice to us. Or
they were actually very nice.
Right?
They must have felt sorry for us. Like, these two have no idea what's going on.
Truly. Like, really, I mean, we were just, it was
I'd like confusing. To think we held our own, but God knows what.
Let's just stick with that story anyways. No, I remember having like one of the best tomatoes of my life at
Yes.
for when we had that lunch that was made for us at the castle, and it was just like I felt like that was the first time I actually ever eaten a tomato. And I think that that's actually ruined tomatoes for me forever. Like I can't eat them here because they just taste like water.
Or rocket even. Like
Yes,
a rocket
the arugula.
arugula.
It was just there were some foods there that I was just like, okay, this is ruined food for me because I
Yeah.
no longer eat anywhere else in the world. But it was that was just such a special experience. I don't even it's such a dream to think that we did
If
all
there
that.
was something I remember when we were staying in the castle, I was going down the stairs. Do you remember I was going down the stairs holding the handrail?
Yeah.
And at the end, it was like an eagle or something sculpted out of like marble.
Yeah.
And the castle owner was like, "Oh, be careful with that. It got bolted down." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh,
It's
that's probably like
probably
8,000 years old."
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I'm so clumsy too. I was just at the end of it, I was just walking around like this,
I
just
bet.
holding my hands in
I
to
mean,
make sure I wasn't going to knock anything.
we were
Like a
sleeping in the
family
rooms
heirloom
with
off the wall.
with like the big like beds where it's like it goes up to the ceiling with all of the drapery and
like a Henry VIII kind of bed that has like the four post bed with
pillars.
the tapestry,
Yeah.
hand quilted,
Again,
hand loomed.
2 girls from Vancouver
bread.
just suddenly are living and staying in a castle in Italy, Tuscany. Anyways, okay, so we then move on to Florence, and then how? Right. Okay, I'm thinking
We
about
took
how
the
we
train into well. Then this person took us around, introduced us to a real estate agent who showed us some apartments,
Right.
and we saw the one on Via delle Belle Donne.
Yeah, the street
Our
of the
home.
prostitutes.
No,
The
you
old
have
prostitutes.
to give context.
Okay. It's not like that when we moved there, but the name La Via delle Belle Donne, we were like, oh my god, the street of the beautiful women, like sounds
Yeah.
so amazing. We had no idea that I don't know.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
it used to be where the gentleman would find the
Yeah.
ladies of the night.
Yeah. So we were
So
like,
that's where we lived.
That's where
that was the first apartment.
that was our first apartment. Yeah.
But I remember as soon as we walked into that apartment, I was like, yes, this is our home.
Yeah,
for
I
now.
think off the bat we were like, yes, and then it just
Ultimately, no.
ultimately no. I feel like that first part of us being there was it just felt kind of like dark. Like when we first moved in there, like it was like the weather was really dark. I mean, it was January. We just started school.
Yeah.
We weren't like speaking the language. We were trying to get our bearings and our sorts and like where do we want to grab our coffee? Where do we want to get our groceries? Like what's really going on here? And then living in that apartment was, I don't know, I just have like weird memories of being there. Like it would just felt like it was kind of like
why. I think because at the time you had when I think part of your rebirth was actually learning to prioritize yourself over any kind of connection that you think you had with a man.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think during that portion, because that from January, I think it was about till March. February.
Yeah.
For that 1 month, this person was kind of still in the picture.
Yeah.
And you were very much tied into that
Too
story.
involved. It was like depending my happiness on whether we were going to get together, we were going to see each other, we were going to do this, we could do that, rather than me sourcing from within myself and being like, this is where we are, this is amazing. And so that hadn't fully come to a close yet.
Nope.
I also think it tied in with like the season of like, because I remember so clearly when it shifted from winter to spring. So that would have been like in March. It was just like, do you remember?
I remember specifically when it shifted.
Yeah.
Weren't we in the garden, the Bubbly Gardens?
We were in the gardens and it was like hot in March.
Drinking
and
$2 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
In the Bubbly Gardens.
Yeah.
And I think with the wine
Yeah.
and
The sun.
also this realization that was really just not going to work for you anymore. It was like, do you remember? It was a full blown,
Yeah.
you had a full blown moment.
Oh yeah.
In that garden.
I think it just, I had this old energy that I really had to let go of that was like still following me from being in Vancouver. And it was just like, this is not serving me anymore. And the more that it was following me, I was just like, I felt like I was like a victim to that feeling and that energy. But for the first time, I started to realize that I was actually in control of making these choices and to who I wanted to accept into my life and the situations that I wanted to say yes to or no to. Like I had control over that. And that was like the first time that I'd really like understood that. So
I think at the time, and that kind of carried forward from probably some like relationship, like ties, like mental ties that you had back in Vancouver, and it like carried forward, that energy kind of carried forward, where I think at the time, you, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think you felt like you needed to be saved by a man, or you needed to have a man come in and he would fix whatever problems or wherever you felt inadequate or wherever you felt like there was a sense of lacking, that he would kind of come in and, plug all the holes, and you would, that would be the answer.
Yeah.
And I think that day in the garden where we were sat there, and I remember I think he had not, your birthday was like the week before.
He like never even sent me happy birthday or something.
He would kind of come in and disappear and come back and disappear. And we've all kind of had those kind of relationships, but this was one of them. And I think you had just had enough. And you're like, so that, I think that apartment, maybe you have that association with it.
Yeah. I think that had a lot to do with it. And then also I feel like with any big transition that you take, there's always like that month or two where you're still trying to like figure everything out with doing anything new. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think just to backtrack a bit, one thing I specifically remember is Florence, when we first arrived, that feeling of how insanely beautiful Florence is so overwhelming that your eyes actually don't know where to look. You actually don't know how to take it in properly. And I think it really, truly took me maybe 1 or 2 months to feel like I could like truly understand and absorb the beauty of this new city.
Totally.
And it was also, Florence is also not a grid system.
Yeah. We're used to like the North American.
You might take one street and then it ends up turning. And then remember we went to a grocery store.
Everything, remember everything goes around the center, like Piazza della Repubblica. Everything goes around the center. So we would get lost.
We would go for groceries and it took us 45 minutes to find our way home.
There's something that's like 5 minutes from the house. Like we were like, I don't understand. So all of these like kind of like new things that were like frustrating to us were now like after a while we were just like, oh yeah, no, it's just, there's
another thing I specifically remember feeling a lot. And I think maybe you might have not felt that as much because you were having like an entanglement with someone.
Yeah.
Whereas I was at that time like in a long distance relationship, but the time change and the hours were so different that throughout like the portion of my day, I would be really alone.
Yeah.
And that was really confronting for me. Leaving the house and being like, if Caitlin's not around, I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know where the grocery store is. I don't know, even if I can find my way back to the house, this is back at this 10 years ago, we didn't have like iPhone 5G and Google Maps wasn't always reliable. Yeah. You had to save your data, so it was like,
different time.
It wasn't like it is now. We really we were kind of out on our own and we had to figure it all out. And I remember that being actually the scariest bit was, what happens if Caitlin's not around? How am I supposed to be entertained? How am I supposed to feel happy? How am I supposed to
Well,
feel
because we were so
entertained.
reliant on each other because we would just, that we were, all we had was each other.
Yeah.
And then I feel like when you make that kind of big leap in your life, the universe will present a bunch of things that will make you feel like, did I make the right choice?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like it's like, the universe is like, did you really want this? Is this what you really wanted to do? So it comes up with all of these different situations where it's like, it's actually testing you. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
It shows you all of these different, obstacles and things that you have to go through. And then when you get to the other side, you're like, oh my God, yes, that was so worth it. But in that beginning part, there's always that question of, did I make the right choice? Did I just leave everything at home for what?
Feel so
to be alone and to be in this country that I don't know and not, anyways, for sure. I think that was the hardest part.
It's a very conflicting feeling because it's hard to unpack, because on one hand, you're grateful, you're seeing really beautiful things, and then simultaneously you're feeling this deep loneliness.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, I've done this now quite a few times, but 10 years ago was the first time that I had done such a big move on my own and realized that feeling is actually temporary, right?
Yes.
Once you make a big leap,
you
might feel all of those things, and that might be enough to scare someone into, calling it quits and going back to where they feel comfortable. But once you persevere through that feeling of loneliness and being alone with your thoughts, and do I even like my thoughts? Like, do I like where my thoughts go when I don't have a sounding board, or I'm, not doing the things I usually do? And so that was very, very, very confronting for me, especially if you were out and whatnot. I kind of didn't quite know what to do with myself. But the one day it actually all turned around is when I took myself to the Uffizi for the first time. You were out for the day, and I thought, well, I'm not going to sit in here. I'm not going to sit in here and be scared of going outside. I'm just going to walk and see where it takes me. And I went to the Uffizi. I spent like 2-3 hours there, looked at every painting really carefully and spent as much time on it as I wanted, took myself for gelato, went on the Ponte Vecchio, and thought, okay, it's going to be okay. It's taken me a month, but it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
We
were in the most beautiful place in the world. So it's like, once you kind of open your eyes to that and you're like, holy shit, I'm actually here. Like, I actually did this. I actually brought myself to this place. I think it took us a while to really like understand that. But I have such a clear vision, and this was like, the time is all a bit of a blur to me, but I remember, because you also went up to where the bench was that overlooks the whole city. And I remember when you went there by yourself and you came back and you were like glowing, and we had started school at this point too. So we had different schedules with our classes. Yeah. And I think that you had gone to...
Did I discover the bench?
You discovered the bench.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
And you came back and you were like, oh my God, like, I found this bench. I have to take you there. It's like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And you were just gushing about it. Like, you were just so like glowing and full of life. Just, oh my gosh, no, you have to go here, Caitlin. Like, this is why we're here. And I actually strangely I think we went there together one time, and I was like blown away by it. And then I remember taking myself there. I don't know, maybe a couple weeks later. And I was sitting there by myself, and I had been experiencing still so much of this old energy of like just around like control, and like I would get like anxious if things weren't like going my way, or like I wasn't like, like I was like, I feel, with a spiritual journey, or like with any kind of journey, it's always a practice, because life will present you different things that you need to, it always brings you to different edges where you're being tested, and things will come up and you're like, oh wow, no, like I have to understand this and then shift my perspective on this, or look at it in a different way. And I was very much at the beginning of changing in my evolution. But when I went to that bench, that was when I had my first like real, what I believe was a guided experience.
At the bench.
It was at the bench. I was sitting on the stump, and I was looking up, and I remember feeling like all of this anxiety over like really silly things, like oh, I've got to get this in for school, or I have to do this, or all these things. And I couldn't really allow myself to just be in the moment. Like I was living outside of my body. And just that moment of like looking around, seeing the birds flying and the church bells going off from the Duomo and the sirens, like the Italian sirens going off, and just thinking to myself, I have no control over anything that's going on. And I even if I was here or not, like all of this stuff has been going on before me. So I have no control over this. I have no control over this life. And then that's when the message came in, and it was like, you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you react to it. That literally came into my brain. And it wasn't like I had thought that before.
It's like a big release.
It was so big. And I remember coming back to our apartment and telling you and just being like, yeah, everything has changed now. Like everything felt so different. And it was really just like, it just felt like I was like coming more and more back into myself. And I think you felt the same way. Like just, it was just constantly every day we were just like getting to know ourselves again, you know?
Is that what it was? It was a simultaneous learning and unlearning practice going on every single day in one way or another.
Yeah.
It was unlearning a lot of bad habits of self-limiting thoughts and, kind of the tie I had to I'm a people pleaser by nature. So back in Vancouver, when I had all of the people to please, I felt really beholden to others. And so all of a sudden being in this new place where nobody knows me and I'm not beholden to anybody, and I can just kind of exist in my own thoughts at my own pace and do things that align with me, was really a new approach to life. It was a bit scary, because who am I outside of others? Who am I outside of the exterior projections and the energy I give to others? What's left for me? So for me, that was the unlearning, and the learning was rebuilding that from scratch. And just for context, I think it's important to explain why this bench was so special. This bench was located in the Rose Garden in Florence, which was atop a hill that overlooked the entire city. And what I really liked about it is actually quite symbolic if you think about it, because it's located in a really beautiful place. And because of a couple shrubs and bushes, people never actually really went there, did they? It was out in the open, it seemed, but no one actually veered off the path to discover what's on the other side. And
it's like a metaphor.
It's very kind of metaphorical, we allowed ourselves to kind of go off the assigned path, which is, allotted in the Rose Garden, where, the tourists would go. They would see like 120 varieties of roses. You get a beautiful view. Above you is this beautiful church, San Miniato, which we'll talk about, I'm sure. And sandwiched between those two things is this little bench in this little clearing and this little opening. And nobody ever went there.
Yeah, it was like private. It was like out in the open, but it was very, very private.
Yeah. But it was like, if you just let yourself discover and push yourself a little bit off the allotted path, there's so much to discover. So I don't know.
Metaphor for like our entire journey and our entire experience as to like where we are now, is we've since then we've always allowed ourselves to like really do things in our own way. Yeah, I think that was definitely like a really big catalyst for how we did Florence from that point forward. It wasn't about seeing and partying and drinking and doing all that. It was actually about really absorbing the experience as much as possible while we had it, wasn't it? Yeah. I think that was really important. And truly, I think the big shift happened when we moved house. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, when we finally decided that apartment was no longer serving us, I mean, there was an Irish bar like right downstairs from us. They would have, it sounded like there was a parade going on outside our windows at like 3 a.m. every night.
Yeah.
And it was just like our landlord was like a little bit nuts. He just like come in and start eating sandwiches at the table and leave his dirty
Did
mess
I block
at the table.
everything out of my memory? I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was just very odd, and we realized that we actually prefer just to sleep in the same bed together rather than to sleep in separate bedrooms.
In a very platonic.
In a very 100% friend way. We just found it was just easier if we just slept in the same bed together, and so there was no need for us to have the 2 different sleeping areas anymore. So we figured we might as well just get a 1-bedroom apartment and pay less.
And it was more economical
It was more economical and was nicer.
It was nicer. So this apartment was truly, there was something incredibly magic about it. The minute we walked in, but the landlord was also very lovely. Yeah. It was like I think there was like 3 generations living in that building. The grandma was on the top floor. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And we walked in, the door, this majestic, beautiful door with like a lock that was like this big with, you'd pull the handle open to open this door. And we walked into this apartment, and immediately you and I looked at each other. We're like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the apartment.
Oh, I remember saying to you beforehand, I was like, Paulina,
so it was just long.
Yeah, it was very interestingly laid out. But do you remember beforehand I said to you, Paulina, like, we have to play it cool when we go. Like, we can't just say we want to take it right away. Like, we have to just look at it and be like, yeah, looks good. We'll get back to you. But then when we went to go see it, we were like, oh my God, can we move in tomorrow, please? Like,
I'm so bad at playing it cool. I have no chill.
Same. Zero poker face whatsoever. We were just like, we want to live here. And do you remember something else we both said? We both said, I really feel like writing or creating in here. Yeah. We felt so inspired in that place.
And wasn't it the castle where Machiavelli had actually lived? And I think we were like in the stables.
Yeah, we were above the stables,
converted stables.
But nonetheless, felt the inspiration. There was definitely some muses flying around in there for sure.
And what was the additional benefit of that apartment is the bathroom wall was actually the back of the church.
Yeah.
So our apartment was connected to the back of Santo Spirito Church. Mm-hmm. So on Sunday morning, we would hear the organs play. You'd hear the choir. We would just open up the windows and brush our teeth out the window, and you hear the music going, and like an Italian old couple kind of walking around together and having a conversation, and the light would kind of shine in through the curtains. And we would just be like,
that was when we fully were getting into it, I think, at that point.
Yeah, I think that's when our flow started.
It was just like, okay, like we're living, like we felt so good in there. We were happy to be on the south side rather than in the center of the city.
Yeah, we were just outside the other side of the river, close to the Ponte Vecchio.
Yeah.
Behind the Santo Spirito Church, Via Covarelli, I'll never forget.
I know. And it was absolute magic. I'll never forget you getting into the brushing your teeth out of the window with the sun on your face. And that's when we were just like getting into like really feeling good within ourselves. Like
I think we were starting to ease into, because there's something about Mediterranean living or living in Italy and specifically is they truly know how to appreciate life and live life not to work or live life to do things. They literally just know how to make how to squeeze joy out of even the most mundane tasks. A walk after dinner, getting your espresso in the morning at your local coffee bar. Like every experience is just enhanced because it's like there's like an underlayer gratitude in every action
so true
that they do. And I think at that time we started to
get really into that.
Get into the rhythm of what living like an Italian actually was.
Yeah.
We had made the effort. We'd gone to school. We'd studied Italian. We only had Italian friends at that time. We didn't kind of stick to our schoolmates, even though they were lovely. But we really wanted to immerse ourselves so deeply in what being in Florence actually was, what being an Italian person actually felt like.
We didn't want to be Canadian. We were just fully pretending like we were locals, basically.
In my head,
we were just from there. Like and then I know you and I have always been super into fashion, but we started getting, like, we were like, how do the Italian girls dress? Like, I did not want to stand out.
That was revolutionary.
We didn't want to stand out like a sore thumb. Like, we didn't want to look like the American tourists. And we started to figure out, like, what did the American girls wear and what did the Italian girls wear? What were they wearing? And just, like, we realized that, like, mostly, I think, with Italian women is that there's a combination between, they definitely actually err more towards comfort, actually. Like, they because I think that amplifies the confidence.
Absolutely.
But also, they don't give a fuck.
No, they didn't. Do you remember we would go to nightclubs, right? And you would see, and I will never, this still has made probably one of the biggest, like, fashion impacts in my life. I remember we'd go to a nightclub, dressed to the nines. You'd spend like 2-3 hours getting ready. It was such a big production. And in would walk in an Italian girl with trainers, jeans, a white t-shirt, no makeup, a little bit of lipstick, and just like her hair's just down, straight from whatever she was doing that day. And all the guys would just go bananas. Yeah. And I was like, but the way she carried herself.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah,
that's the answer.
I think it's like, actually, for me, is true femininity.
Yeah. Absolutely. Really leaning into the feminine.
Yeah.
In a very healthy way.
Totally. Not in this way where it's like, oh, you got to have this done up and that done up and this. Like, it's more just like this, like, you can be this strong, beautiful, confident woman and still, like, look really good and have those two come together. I was like, yeah, it was just revolutionary. I'll never forget, like, seeing the women that would walk around, like, in the wintertime with their fur coats on, and then they'd have full-blown just PJ set underneath, but
and
like
trainers.
Super nice with trainers,
fabulous sunglasses,
Uggs.
Hair bouncy,
Uggs.
Always like gorgeous, fabulous hair,
amazing hair. But
their
the Uggs,
hair would be just,
the Uggs with the fur coat actually changed my life, because here there was like, Uggs were really in, but then all of a sudden it was like Uggs were really bad. But like going there and seeing these like super classy ladies wearing Uggs, fur coat, sunglasses, cigarette, dog leash in the other hand, just walking around, like, or like seeing them with the ice cream. And we start to notice all these little things. Like, I always noticed that the Italian women, it's not that they would say no to having sweets or having ice cream, but they just get the small one. Like the Americans, it was like, oh, I gotta get the like 6-scoop ice cream, and they're, going out and they're getting super drunk and they're doing this and they're eating the big pastas and whatever. And sorry, this is very stereotypical. I don't mean this for every American. I love Americans.
Tourists in general. I think your main observation is more about like noticing indulgence versus just appreciating and really being conscious in how you're consuming something.
Totally. You can have a glass of wine during the middle of the day, even if it's on your lunch break from school. There's nothing wrong with that. But you just have one glass.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Whereas here, it's like, you can't have a glass of wine in the middle of the day, but if you drink like 2 bottles on the weekend by yourself, that's totally normal. Like, it's like, so
Absolutely.
We just started to notice these sort of like things that we just really wanted to adopt, and we've just basically pretended like we were Italian from that point forward, and
we just wore the skin. We decided that was going to be how we were going to enact our lives from that point forward.
But
I think I am proud of us 10 years ago for actually making that having the wherewithal to decide what kind of experience we were going to get. Because at 24, 25 years old, we could have very easily just partied throughout the entire time we were there. Don't get me wrong, we had a great time, but that was an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
Our priority was going to the museums, getting the most out of school. You were really studying. I was really studying design. You were really studying design. You were studying interior. We went to every class. We didn't skip school. We were very present in every experience. We would have 30 minutes a day where we would just speak Italian to each other.
Mm-hmm.
We were 10 years ago, we still had the mind to make sure that we were conscious in this experience,
mm-hmm.
to grow and to observe and to understand and to, pit it up against how we used to live our lives and where we want to make those changes and how those changes would make us better people.
Definitely. And just like,
that's pretty amazing.
It is really amazing when you think about it. And just, I think another thing that we really learned there was self-love. I think that was like a big piece of it, was truly learning how to like make choices from that place.
Yeah.
Rather
absolutely.
than making choices that maybe we knew in the moment would feel bad, and then we'd make that choice for ourselves anyways. Like, we really started to see like, okay, yeah, no, I love myself, so I don't want to do that to myself, or, and kind of like looking at things from that perspective of really like honoring the decisions that felt best for us. I think
that was, that's when things started to, I think that's when the true rebirth actually started. The real personal renaissance actually started, is when we started to understand that the self-love component had to be the seed and that would actually sprout, from which everything would sprout from. We had to really plant that seed within ourselves and figure out what it is that we need to do to make sure that we find love for ourselves every single day in everything that we do, and honor ourselves that way.
It's the most important place to come from.
Yeah.
With every single thing. And I think that's when we truly started to understand that, or to at least implement it. Because I think before then, I think that's what might have been lacking.
Absolutely. I think there was one crucial aspect pre-Florence that we didn't mention, and it relates to self-love, which is why I'm bringing it up. When you, me, and our mutual best friend and psychic guru, Chloe, went to Paris together.
Wow. I can't believe you're bringing this up. This is amazing.
In between Florence and London, we had a little 5-day trip to Paris with Chloe. And on the first day, we walked on that Lover's Bridge, and where all the locks were. And we thought, okay, right, let's buy a lock. Let's lock our intentions on this bridge. And before we did that, we went and sat in the park in front of Notre Dame. And we really thought about it. We're like, right, what is our intention with this lock? Do you remember what we said?
I feel like it was like to always stay true to ourselves.
Yeah, it was to always live in our truth.
To always live in our truth. Okay.
To always live in our truth.
That's right.
That was the intention that the three of us decided to give to that lock.
And that was
we signed our names.
Yeah.
And we locked it on the bridge.
And that was like I feel like that was just the beginning of us even having that kind of awareness.
Yes.
Over that kind of thing.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Of really like being intentional about like, how do we want to live our lives? Like, what really makes us feel good?
Yes.
What kind of person?
I didn't even know what it meant then.
Yeah, same. Like, we made it before we even really understood it. But we knew all those things. Just like we knew that we really wanted to go and do something different. We didn't know what that meant. we just kept on following these like little like steps forward into that direction. And then I can look back on that and be like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we did.
That's exactly what we did. And then fast forward back to that time in Florence where you're saying that's where, the self-love component came in. Well, living our truth at that time and, from that point forward has always been make sure that self-love is at the root of everything and every decision that you make. And because that is truly honoring yourself, that actually means that you are, the catalyst of everything that happens to you in your life. So make sure it comes from a place of self-love.
Yeah, we are the master magicians of creating our lives. And I feel like that's where we really started to understand that. I feel like we were much more likely to just, if something presented itself to us, we were much more likely to just go along with it, to make other people feel comfortable, or like we were too scared to say no. And then when we started to understand, like, okay, no, actually, I can ask myself, like, does this resonate with me? Does this feel good to me? Do I want to go through with this? Or, whatever that thing was, I think we really started to understand that we could create the life that we wanted through, like, the love that we had for ourselves. That
and being intentional.
The root of it, and then being intentional about it, and tapping into, like, more of our intuition. What felt right? Rather than just always trying to make everyone else feel comfortable or safe. Like, I think we really understood that then.
I think the self-love component also was hand in hand with gratitude. And the gratitude portion started when we started doing our pilgrimages to San Miniato on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
We would go to our little cafe. We would get our little coffee. We would walk up those stairs all the way up to the church, the highest point in Florence, San Miniato, which is still one of my favorite churches. I think it was built in 10 BC, like the original base of the church.
Yes,
I think it was like 10.
Part.
Yeah, it was. It's beautifully positioned. Also, when you come in, the way the light filters through the little windows.
You can tell that was intentionally planned, that they
made
it so
the way the light tunneled, it was just, but there's something about San Miniato always felt like there was it was extremely powerful, the energy in there. Extremely powerful.
Agree.
And we used to go in there and we used to sit for, in sometimes at opposite sides of the church. And we would sit there for 10 minutes and we would just be grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We would be grateful to ourselves and to each other and to our families and to all the good in our lives. And we were bringing gratitude back into the equation. And I think that goes a lot. I think that goes hand in hand with self-love as well. I totally
agree. Yeah.
And I think those little weekly pilgrimages was always a little reminder to infuse self-love with gratitude all the time,
Totally.
And every time we would come out of those church doors and you have the whole view of Florence, it's just like, it was just majestic, wasn't it?
It really was. There are no words really for like that experience and discovering that church. And like truly going and like reflecting on our lives and like reflecting on like on the choices that we were making or who we were, where we were at. Like, I think having that self-reflection is so important to understand, like, okay, how can I do things differently next time? And just taking like an inventory of like, of all of the things in your life. And we carved out that space by going there and doing that for ourselves.
And we took Chloe. One of my favorite moments was also when it was Chloe came back to visit us when we were living there. And there's 3 of us in this tiny apartment. And it was the dead of summer. So it must have been 35 degrees at least, if not more. and we had a small desk fan.
It wasn't even a desk fan. It attached to the USB
It was a
in my
USB
computer.
desk fan. That's all we had. We had one each.
Yeah.
I don't know why we didn't invest in a full-size fan. That's very odd.
I don't know. We had like no money. Like we
didn't have it all figured out, okay?
No. We were also eating pasta, like 30-cent pasta for dinner every night. We could actually make that into 2 meals.
With a salad.
Yeah.
And a €2 bottle of wine.
That's right. That's right.
And it was dreadfully hot. We were trying to sleep, and I remember I kind of woke up and I looked at you and you were awake, and kind of I was like, I think maybe Chloe heard us talk and she was awake, and it was like 4 a.m. and I'm like, I can't go back to sleep, it's too hot. And you were like, same, it's horrendous. And we're like, let's go for a walk. And there was not a soul on the streets.
No.
And we decided to walk to San Miniato, and we sat on those steps before Florence had even woken up.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just taking it all in together. That was one of my highlights.
Same,
for sure.
Same.
I'd never seen Florence so empty.
I know. And also just it was such a gift to like be out and about at that time.
Yeah.
Like to see Florence in that light, like with like the sun just coming up, or maybe it was a cloudy day, but either way, the light hadn't even come up yet. And it was just like, yeah, that was like a huge memory that stands out in my mind. But there's so many different parts and pieces. Like it just feels like almost every single day was like a memory.
Every day felt like a memory.
Do you know what I mean?
I could just talk about. I also remember some very specific things would kind of very small things would make such a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what was so amazing about it. Like going down a street that you hadn't gone down before and you felt like you discovered something new, or going to the Uffizi with our art teacher, who was amazing.
Yeah, she was great.
On a weekly basis, we had to take this art history course. And we weren't sat in a classroom looking at slides. She would take us to the museum, and we would do different sections of the Uffizi or various other museums. And I couldn't believe how lucky we were to have that kind of experience. And so it almost felt like a backstage pass to Florence.
Yeah, most definitely. At what point did you realize that you were probably done with your relationship and was probably not going to go back to Vancouver? Because I have a very clear memory of this, but what was it for you?
I think I remember there was one time you and I were walking on the bridge and we were looking at the Ponte Vecchio, and much like I had said before, the design, becoming a designer and wishing that into existence. I think it was one of those things that I just kind of said it out loud, where I don't know that I want to be in this anymore. I just don't feel like the same person anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I had said that to you, and it had startled you. You were kind of taken aback a little bit. You were like, "Oof, what?" That's the first time
I had suspected it, but I just knew that you would tell me like when you were ready. And then when you said it, I was like, oh yeah. And I like, once you say it out loud, it's like impossible to go back. So you were,
it's like, you can't I love saying this, but it's so applicable. It's so true. Like you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Once you know something, you can't unknow it.
Yeah.
Once you've come into learning, you can't all of a sudden decide, oh, I don't want to know. Like, now.
Yeah.
It's made true. So what are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it still took me some time because, this was a person I really cared about and loved deeply on many levels. But I had at this point just evolved out and really deeply knew that I had no interest in going back to Vancouver. And I didn't know on what planet that was ever going to realign for us again. Like our life trajectories were just polar opposites. He was a bit older. He wanted to settle down. And I had just discovered myself. There was no way that I could go back to being that person where, you know, my significant other only knew this one version of me. Too much had happened from that time that I left to that particular stage in my life. Too much had happened. We still sometimes can't put it into words how much had happened for us.
Yeah.
Emotionally, spiritually, physically. So much had happened and transformed on a daily basis. I don't even know how I could catch him up to all that change. It just felt, the chasm just felt too big. It was too big. And the most difficult thing was just knowing that it was gonna create heartbreak. And I hate, as a people pleaser, that is like the worst thing on the planet, is putting myself before somebody else. So that was where I had to actually let him go in order to be the new version of myself, you know? Well, probably the person I always was, like what you said, actually. It wasn't a new version. It was probably who I always was, but was too afraid to let out. I was keeping myself so small. And all of a sudden I wasn't small anymore. And all of a sudden there was a big world out there. And I'm like, how can I be the same person in this relationship? It just wasn't possible. So that was really, that was brutal.
That was.
I still wish I would have had the wherewithal to probably break up or do things differently, but it's all in hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was a valuable lesson learned.
For sure. And I think you had reached a point where you couldn't actually like handle it anymore, to not be 100% truthful.
I wasn't living in my truth.
It just reached, because I remember it, like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna do it on this day or whatever. Like, it was literally like at the weirdest time.
I remember it was
in like the middle of the night.
The date. It was like the beginning of October
3rd or 4th.
It was October 3rd. I don't know what it is. I mean, it's an angel number, so it makes sense.
Definitely.
The 3 just keeps coming up. But we had left a nightclub. It was quite late, but I actually wasn't drunk because I wasn't even in the mood to drink, because it was just very unsettling. It was starting to become so loud. Like, it was in my head and it was pulsating. It was so loud because I felt like I wasn't honoring him, which wasn't fair. I wasn't honoring myself, which also wasn't fair. And something had to change because, you know, I couldn't go on living like this. And I remember we went home and I had messaged him saying, I really need to talk to you. I went in the bathroom because you had a guest staying as well, which is like the worst timing ever. But it just had to happen. It was like, it's happening. It's happening.
Like, you couldn't even wait like another second.
Couldn't wait another second. Couldn't wait till tomorrow. It had to happen immediately. And it was like the worst phone call of my entire life. But I feel at the same time, I liberated myself from guilt and shame and not honoring myself, and then liberated him to be with somebody that deserves to love him the way he deserves to be loved.
Yeah.
So it was tough, but it was also probably the best thing I ever did for both of us.
Yeah, ultimately. I think so, definitely. Yeah, there was just no going back at that point. We had become so
evolved
and just really became real and in our truth to ourselves, that it was like, it would have been pretty hard to go back to a relationship there was no going back. Like, you can't go back to the person that you were when you were here. Like, you were just on this like completely different stratosphere.
We were both going in these like immense, it was like a daily shift. It was because it was so intentional. A journey was so intentional. We were working so hard to evolve that you can't really reconcile that if you're not in alignment with somebody, it's not going to work, you know?
Yeah. So
I
that
remember,
was up
I
almost
remember,
until a year of leaving. It was about 10 months after we had left that you had gotten, we had both evolved that much, and you had made that choice to be like, I can't be in this relationship that I was in back in Vancouver. I'm not going back to Vancouver. There was actually like, once you had broken the ties with that, there was no reason for you to even come back to Vancouver.
Yeah. And my parents at the time were living in Dubai.
Yeah.
And I think one of the crucial things that actually made me realize that it's like we knew that there was a change happening, but we didn't have anybody else to mirror that change back to us. It wasn't until I went to visit my parents about midway through our experience, and they were living in Dubai. I went to visit them. And I remembered, like, this is the thing that stuck with me the most. My dad said to me, it's so nice. Like, I feel like I'm seeing you again for the first time. So it's like the person that he either had in his mind was reconciling with the person that he was with, or the person he always knew I could be, you know?
Yeah.
And when he said that, it really struck a chord, and it really, I don't know, it put it in perspective that I had indeed actually evolved, you know? If your dad says, hi, nice to meet you again, it was like, oh, she's there, you know?
Yeah, and again, it's like this evolution, but it was probably just you going back to like how he knew you from when you were a kid.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Before all of the societal pressures, before
That's true.
all
That's
of
a
the
good
different
point.
filters that are put onto us from the world, all the different conditioning and
projections
and projections and all of these different beliefs that are created and things that we just end up carrying around. You know, I think we just kind of went back to like who we were before all that stuff was put onto us, but with this like beautiful new lens of you know, actually having wisdom. Like, okay, we've gone through things, so like we have learned from that, and so I think it was more just probably that's what he was seeing, was that he was like, yeah, like, this is who you were from like how I remember you being before all of this stuff started weighing you down. Because that's how I remember you being, was I felt like you were actually like physically weighed down by everything, by your life, by everything that was going on around you. And then it was this kind of this like release, like you were just full release.
Yeah.
Like even your hair, remember when I dragged you to get your hair cut,
you
had
dragged
this like
me to the hair.
black hair, dark box black hair. I used to do it too.
Yeah.
But you were still doing it, and it was like you had the dark
black,
what's it called, the extra, what is it called when you have
the grow out?
Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
So you had those, and I was just like, I cannot let you wear these anymore. And suddenly, but I felt like
the extensions. Oh yeah.
And then so when I dragged you to get your haircut, and then suddenly it was like lighter and blonde, and you were just, it was just this energy, this shift, you know. And I think, anyway, so much to that, but that really was that entire experience was really like the one of the first rebirths, probably other than my own actual birth, that I had experienced. And it has been the catalyst for how I've done everything in my life from that point.
Me too.
How like this podcast in and of itself, like how I've chosen to mother, to be a partner, to create, and to just be as a human being, has all stemmed from that experience. And I feel like it's I'm also speaking for you too, that it's just always like coming back to that point. And I think the message is that like that everything is on the other side of that leap, you know. Like it feels so uncomfortable to make those choices, but to truly, like, when you can follow through on something that you truly want to do, like, I think that you'll be rewarded, you know. I
Absolutely.
think that was like,
you got to make friends with discomfort.
You have to.
You've got to be, you know, there is Florence taught me that being uncomfortable and not knowing what's around the bend is okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Because if you have self-belief, and if you are intentional, if you have self-love, you will find a way to create that path for yourself, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know, you don't always need to know. You don't always need to be comfortable. Comfortable doesn't equate happiness. Comfortable doesn't equate, you know, everything being perfect. Uncomfortable is good.
Yeah, it is.
Perfect is good. You know, I learned all of that from Florence. Florence.
Yeah. And
walking around with grocery bags for 2 hours and not finding our apartment. You know,
what a metaphor. Not being able to speak the language, like not being able to have a conversation with someone where you're just wanting to ask for like the simplest thing and just being so uncomfortable and being okay with like looking like an idiot. Like, you know, like truly just like not knowing something or saying something the wrong way and just being like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot better to like feel like try to find the ease within feeling uncomfortable than just to stay in that comfortable place where you're just like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to step out of my comfort zone. And we just like went to the nth degree of like feeling that.
Well, having this kind of experience that we have had now 10 years ago and are still utilizing all those tools that we learned in Florence is essentially just giving your soul a chance to stretch to its limitations and all of its possibilities, not limitations, but possibilities. Like, how far can you stretch your heart and your soul to experience and to allow yourself to experience new things and to absorb it and to be conscious and to be grateful. You know, those are very actually quite basic things in life that are accessible to everybody. Yeah. All those tools are accessible to everybody. And you can 100%. Still find, even though now, you know, I've now lived in London for 5 years. Every time I go into the city and pick a different part of the city, that same wonderment that I had in Florence 10 years ago, I still apply today.
Yeah.
Every time I go in, oh, wow, look at this. Oh, I've never been here before. How beautiful, how exciting. I'm so grateful that the Florence journey has led me to this exact moment. So it's always like a point of reference for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never ended up even coming back to Vancouver. I came back to Vancouver kicking and screaming, but you went on and you stayed abroad and now you're, like you said, you're still living in London, or that you've been in London for the last 5 years. Do you think that we'll end up back in Italy?
I have always said this, and I still really feel it to be true. I definitely could see myself living in Italy at one point in my life again. I don't know when, I don't know how, but if that story does not yet feel complete for me, how do you feel? Do you feel the same way?
I know, like, I have this vision of, like, I don't know if it would be full-time or permanent, but I can see us, like, you know, I mean, like, in the sense of, like, living there, but I can 100% see us having a house
retiring.
There. We would have we'll have a house there, 100%. And yes, being there for, like, long periods of time throughout the year, I can absolutely see it has to be a part of my life. Like, I'll never forget that feeling of when we were initially flying into Rome and just literally feeling like I was coming back home for the first time. Of just being, because if you think about it, like, my ancestors are from there. Like, my DNA is from there. Like, the climate, the food, all of these things, those are all within me. So it really felt like I was like, this is the missing piece, is being there. And so, yeah, like, I can't wait to take the girls there for the first time. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I just think that, we'll always, I want it to always be a part of my life in some way. And
it's always going to be a part of your life in one way.
It already has been, but I think no one can take away the story from us, you know, like nobody. Sure. And so it's more like, I think just physically being there will be really full circle for me, especially with, like, having kids and having a partner and because those are the things that I used to, like, wish for and dream for when I was at San Miniato.
Your journey in Florence led you to Matisse in Vancouver.
100%. 100%.
And your girls and your family. And you built 100%. And created the family you've always wanted.
100.
Because of who you became in Florence.
Without a doubt. I was calling that in every single day. I remember like writing down like this is who I want to be with.
Yeah.
This is what I want to have. I want to be a mother, like just creating that. And I think it's to go back there and then bring them all there is just going to be like, such
I'm definitely going to come and crash your family vacation.
Definitely. And how funny is it that we both actually ended up with Italian guys, because we always we like literally always, not only just Italian guys, Canadian Italian guys, because we always used to be like, we always
they're both half Italian as well.
They're both half Italian. Yeah.
They're both half Italian.
We always thought that we would end up with Italians, because of course we also like wanted to stay in Italy.
Yeah.
So we were
which
like,
we could have because of our passports, but I think it was
more in our mind. It was more like, okay, if we like have, meet Italian men, then it increases the odds of staying here even more so. Yeah. It didn't happen that way. The universe presented it in a completely different way, but in the
it packaged it completely
possible.
Differently. Yeah.
Like, it's just so funny to me that's how it ended up in the end. But I feel like we could literally talk for another like 6 hours about all of this stuff, and we would
might need to do a part 2, Caitlin.
There will definitely be a part 2, and probably more than that, but hopefully next time it'll be in person when you're here in the spring, and also one time in Italy.
I agree. Okay, see, we are strong manifestors, and I like the sounds of that.
Right?
So
I can see it. I can already...
May it be so.
May it be so, 100%. And also, there will be so much more in description when you release your book on this.
Yes.
In the future. There is
an outline.
There is an outline. It's in the works.
There is a book outline.
So I'm like, I just know that it's just going to be so incredible, and it's going to, all come together, because there's so many deeper stories.
I mean, even down to the I photoshopped your face on Beyonce's twin announcement.
Yeah.
And it was also a very like Venus, like almost like a Florence Renaissance painting. Botticelli like announcement, and here you are with
had twins. That you said that you gave that to me when I was pregnant with Safi.
Yeah.
And then I had twins like 3 years later.
Yes. I am a clairvoyant and a designer.
That's right. That's right. So, Trina, how can people find you, and how can they get in touch with you?
If anybody wants to get in touch with me, you can find me on my website, which is www.pk-creative.com, or you can follow me at Paulina KKAY 22 on Instagram.
I love you so much, Treens. Thank you so much for being my absolute, oh my gosh, sister in this world. And I actually don't even have a word for it, because it just feels like beyond that. And
it's indescribable. It goes back lifetimes.
That's right. That's right. And I'm sure our story is written already somewhere back in the Florentine memoirs somewhere. And just thank you so much. And I love you.
I love you. Thank you for having me on and allowing me to share the story with you. I'm so grateful.
Of course.
Love you.
Love you, Trina. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.